You wake up tired, your back hurts, and somehow, despite working your ass off for 20 years, you're still behind. This isn't just aging, it's habits quietly draining your energy, money, and purpose. And today, I'm exposing 9 hidden routines that are robbing men over 40 of their future, financially, physically, and emotionally. Because the real threat isn't a market crash or a health scare, it's the slow death of your ambition, masked as comfort, convenience, and doing okay. By the end of this video, you'll be ready to break the cycle before it breaks you, so stick around. I'm Jason. I retired at 39 with about $1 million. Not because I hit the jackpot, but because I ditched the habits that drain most people for life. Today, through this YouTube channel, I help folks over 40 do the same. Here's the reality that nobody tells us, especially men our age. Most guys don't actually lose their future to one bad bet or one bad break. We lose it bit by bit, stuck on autopilot, repeating routines built for a life that we've already outgrown. The cost isn't just in dollars, it's in years and meaning that we never get back. So let's get into it. Habit number 1 is chasing approval. Let's get real for a second. Have you ever caught yourself hesitating just because you're stuck thinking about what other people might say? You'd figure that by now, after 40 trips around the sun, we'd be done with second guessing ourselves. But it still creeps in. I mean, how many times have you wanted to speak up with your own opinions at family dinner, but you just bite your tongue to keep the peace? Maybe there's that solo trip you've always wanted to take, but you pull back because you're worried that your family won't get it. I know that I absolutely had this feeling before I booked my first solo trip to Thailand. Or maybe you keep going to those weekly dinners where honestly you leave feeling drained just because it looks good to play along. Here's the thing I wish someone close had told me straight up. Most people are too wrapped up in their own worries to even notice what you're doing. And even if they do judge, so what? Screw those people. At this stage, you're not that kid hunting for approval anymore. You're a grown man, you've been through enough to know your own mind. And let's be real, the clock isn't slowing down. See, every time you let someone else's opinion steer your choices, that's a piece of your own life that you're giving away. Picture yourself years from now, looking back and realizing that you held back from actually living your own life. You only get one shot at this, my brother, so why spend it living for someone else? Habit number 2 is living by a script that was never yours. Did you ever wake up one day and realize that you've been following rules that you never actually agreed to? I know I had many days like that. Maybe it's the career you chose because it looked good on paper, the way you manage money, relationships, or even downtime. It's all molded by someone else's expectations. Your parents, your church, what your friends valued years ago, or just old dreams that don't fit you anymore. Sometimes that script you picked up isn't even yours. It just seeped in over the years trying to do what's right. But here's the thing. Most of us keep marching through midlife trying to stick to those old rules long after they stop making sense. We go through the motions thinking that there's some invisible panel keeping score, except there isn't. No one is handing out grades for towing the line, and there's definitely no scoreboard telling how well you stuck to someone else's vision for your life. By the time you've hit 40, you've earned enough scars and wisdom to start questioning the script. You get to ask, does this still fit who I am now? And if the answer is no, you absolutely have permission to start editing or throwing out pages entirely. Because if you ever pause to question those old rules, don't be shocked if you end up living a life that feels foreign. A life that never really belonged to you. Look, this is your second act. Isn't it time you wrote your own lines? Alright, so that's 2 habits that you're going to kick after this video. Be sure to drop a comment and let me know if you can relate to any of these. Habit number 3 is avoiding hard conversations. Here's something that I learned the hard way. Avoiding uncomfortable conversations feels easier in the moment, but it's an expensive trade. See, I used to bite my tongue, nod along, and just let things slide just to keep the peace at work, with friends, even with myself. And yeah, it saved me a little discomfort up front, but it cost me plenty in the long run. Think about the hard truths you avoid. The ones that gnaw at you after midnight. Maybe it's telling someone important to you that something isn't working. The partnership, the project, the arrangement. Maybe it's owning up to yourself that the life that you built looks safe from the outside, but doesn't light you up on the inside. I found myself staring in the mirror, realizing that I'd gotten good at sidestepping these talks, hoping problems might dissolve if I just waited them out. But the reality is that every time you pass in a tough conversation, you try to shot at real change for momentary comfort. See, these conversations sting because they matter. They're proof that there's something worth fighting for. And honestly, one of the clearest red flags that you're drifting through life is when you realize that you can't remember the last time you said something that felt risky but true. I know it isn't easy. My stomach still nuts up before pressing send on like a hard email or sitting someone down to set the record straight. But in my experience, the alternative is kind of like quiet numbness that's far worse than any temporary awkwardness. If things have felt stuck for a while, maybe it's time to ask, what uncomfortable conversation have you been putting off? In just a few minutes, I'm going to be sharing a challenge that I never saw coming after retirement. A struggle that nearly every man over 40 faces in silence. If you've ever wondered why finding real friends gets harder with age, or felt that quiet loneliness creeping in, don't go anywhere. Hear me out, because what I found could be the missing link to building the connections that you really want. Habit number 4 is refusing to let go. If we're honest with ourselves, every one of us clings to something past its expiration date. Maybe it's a friendship that shifted from genuine connection to silent obligation. A professional title that once gave you pride but now just feels heavy. Or maybe it's a version of yourself that you keep trying to live up to, long after it stopped being who you are. So why do we hang on? Well, it's not that these things still serve us. More often it's fear. Fear of admitting that a chapter closed, or that our investment of years, effort, even identity didn't deliver what we hoped. This is the classic sunk cost fallacy, believing that the time, energy, or heart that you've already put in means that you have to keep going, even if it's draining you. But here's the hard truth. Time invested is not a good enough reason to waste more. The real question isn't how much it once mattered, it's whether it fits your life now. Still holding on to a friendship because it's familiar, not fulfilling, keeping that job title because change feels scary, not inspiring, or chasing approval from people who aren't even in your story anymore. Every day you hold on is a day that you could be making room for something and someone better suited for your next chapter. Well, I'm here to tell you that letting go isn't quitting, it's courage. Take a hard look at what's weighing you down, and if it doesn't give back, maybe it's time to let go. If any of this hits home and you're finding value in this video, please consider supporting the channel and hitting like. It really does help more than you know, and I truly appreciate it. Habit number 5 is addiction to certainty. And man, this is a big one. See, structure and routine are valuable, but for a lot of us, the need for certainty silently takes over. What starts as sensible planning becomes a heavy barrier. If you can't see the ending, you won't even begin. That trip you've been talking about for the past 10 years, it still sits on your bucket list because the outcome isn't guaranteed. The business trip or project that you secretly care about never leaves the drawing board, all because you can't promise yourself it'll work out. You tell yourself you're being responsible, careful, logical, but the reality is that's just fear with a new paint job. The trouble is, anything truly meaningful, reinventing who you are, building new relationships, finding a deeper purpose, it lives right on the other side of uncertainty. Growth always means moving before you have all the answers, trusting yourself enough to tolerate the risk. Playing it safe and waiting for a sign might feel comfortable, but it guarantees that you'll stay exactly where you are. And I'm telling you, when I booked my first trip to Asia, I was scared as hell. But once I got there, I realized that all that fear and anxiety was for nothing. That trip forever changed my life. So ask yourself, what could actually go right if you walked into the unknown for once, instead of hanging back until the coast is clear? Now trust me, the person you want to become is out there, waiting to see if you'll take the first step without a map. Habit number 6 is hoarding instead of living. And this one is personal for me because I've spent years clutching tight to my time, my money, my energy, telling myself I was just being responsible, building that safety net, planning for someday. Maybe you recognize this too. You put off the real trips, delay buying those little luxuries, or keep saying no to anything that feels like a splurge. All because there could be an emergency, a downturn, one more reason to wait. But here's what you need to realize. There's a line between being prepared and just letting your best years slip past untouched. I used to congratulate myself on every dollar saved, every hour guarded, but I realized that I was living like there'd always be a better future moment to enjoy the payoff. And sometimes in the name of responsibility, we end up being stingy, not just with our money, but with our lives. It's easy to tell yourself that generosity is only for others, but the truth is, at some point, you have to ask, what's all this saving for if you never cash in on the freedom that you worked for? The trips you never take, the help you never give yourself, the time you keep hoarding as if you'll wake up with more of it down the line. I mean, it all adds up. And waiting forever to enjoy what you built doesn't guarantee you a better tomorrow. I mean, sure, being responsible is smart, but don't confuse it with never giving yourself permission to actually live. Sometimes generosity means finally being willing to spend a little on freedom, on help, on experiences, just for you. I mean, what's the point of building a good life if you never let yourself fully live it? Habit number 7 is the empty retirement mindset. See, retirement is sold as a reward. Finally, freedom from the daily grind. But here's what doesn't get talked about. For a lot of men, it quickly feels less like a new beginning and more like a void. You can shut down the work email, toss your routine out the window, and suddenly all the structure, purpose, and camaraderie that you've known is just gone. No more deadlines, no one is counting on you, and in the quiet, that big question starts creeping in. Who am I when nobody's assigning me a role? I've seen how easy it is to fall into this. After decades of defining yourself by what you did, retirement can feel like stepping off a cliff with no destination in sight. You've looked forward to this for years, only to realize that you may not actually know what to do with your days or yourself. The problem isn't retirement itself, it's walking into this chapter without a plan for meaning beyond work. The truth is, everyone needs something to move forward, a purpose to build, people to help, passions to explore, or connections to deepen. If you retire early and only fill your time with distractions, you risk fading into the background of your own story. Purpose doesn't retire just because your job did. The second half of life can be richer than the first, but only if you're intentional about building it. Don't let retirement be an ending. Let it be the start of becoming someone new, fueled by what actually matters to you, not just the absence of a job. There's still time to make this chapter unforgettable, but only if you step up and write it yourself. Habit number 8 is waiting for someday. There's this sneaky trap that I see all the time. Maybe you recognize it too. You keep telling yourself, maybe I'll take this trip, or someday I'll reconnect with that old friend, or yeah, someday I'll finally start that project that lights me up. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Someday isn't real. It's just a story that we tell ourselves to feel safe while another year quietly slips past. I've been guilty of it myself more than I care to admit, postponing things that mattered because it felt like there'd always be more time. But the reality is, after 40, you realize that there just isn't. You and I are likely both closer to the end than the beginning now, and that's not meant as a scare tactic, but as a wake-up call. If something stirs in you, if there's an experience or a conversation or a dream that keeps haunting you, stop bargaining with time. Stop assuming that you'll feel ready tomorrow. We all know the future isn't guaranteed. All we get are the chances that we take now. And even tiny steps count. A phone call, opening an application, booking the ticket, saying yes to something that we ordinarily wouldn't. The second half of life was never meant for standing still or settling for what's comfortable. It's about living in a way that feels honest, messy, and fully awake. Don't let someday take your life off the table. Habit number 9 is withdrawing from friendship. There's a quiet epidemic rising among men over 40. Real, lasting friendship is becoming as rare as a payphone. Most of us build our social lives around work, shared projects, office jokes, the daily rhythm of seeing the same faces, but then retirement hits. Suddenly, that ready-made network evaporates overnight. I know this struggle firsthand. Work was my social safety net. Without it, reaching out feels awkward, almost embarrassing, as if genuine friendship is something that you're supposed to grow out of. The truth is, we're not alone in this. Study after study shows that men, especially as we hit midlife and beyond, are experiencing a crisis of connection. More men than ever report not having a single close friend that they could call in the middle of the night. And this isn't just a minor issue. Loneliness carries a real risk for your health, your mood, even your lifespan. Most male friendships, they start out shoulder to shoulder, job sites, happy hours, little league bleachers, and it takes real intention to keep connections alive. And yet, there's still this stubborn myth that men should be able to go it alone, that asking for company or admitting that you're lonely is somehow weak. But here's what I've learned. Vulnerability is the real glue that holds friendships together. And the second half of life is when we need it most. The cost of isolation is far steeper than the risk of reaching out. It could mean calling an old friend, joining a community group, or inviting someone for coffee, even if it feels a little bit awkward at first. If you're struggling with this like I have, you're not broken. You're just human. And the fastest way to shrink loneliness is to name it and start building connections on purpose. Real friendship isn't just a luxury for your good years. It's fuel for the road ahead. If you want to enrich your next chapter, bring someone else into the story with you. Research links chronic loneliness to increased risk of heart disease, depression, and early mortality among older adults. AARP reports that more than 1/3 of adults over 45 are lonely. The rate is especially high among retired men. Look, my friend, you don't need to overhaul your life in one big leap. Instead, take a quiet moment and pick out the habit from this list that struck a nerve, the one you felt deep inside your gut. Ask yourself honestly, what would it look like if I just stopped tolerating this? Change starts with small, courageous moves. Maybe it's sending a text that you've been putting off. Maybe it's finally spending on something that nurtures you, or reaching out to rebuild an old friendship. Whatever it is, start small, but do start. I'd love to hear if any of these habits hit home for you, or if there's one that I didn't mention that you think should be on the list. So drop your story suggestion in the comments below. And if this conversation resonated, hit the like button and subscribe for more real talk and building a life that fits you, especially in the chapters that come after 40. Thanks for being here.